Me and my wife moved from Allentown to a smaller, more wooded community. It was an older townhome, 2 stories with a finished basement. It wasn't in the best neighborhood, but then again, there are far worse in the area. Our house was an end unit on the farthest side of our cul-de-sac. There's a small but dense patch of timber behind our house that separates our cul-de-sac from the development next door. It's pretty nice, especially in the summer. Kind of why we got the place. We thought it'd be a perfect place to settle down, maybe try to have a baby. For whatever reasons, birds loved that house. It's really incredible. My wife practices Wicca. I'm not Wiccan, by the way. I'm just an Easter Sunday Presbyterian. And she's also something of a nature lover. Twig hippie, I call her. So anyway, she bought a bunch of bird feeders and junk to put on the back patio. You know, to attract purple martins and the like. It never took, though. All we got were squirrels and mourning doves. It was the weirdest damn thing. Birds were always hanging out on our back patio and in the little strip of lawn between our houses and the woods, but never the neighbors' houses. This was the way it'd go all throughout that first summer when we first moved in. Then when winter came, they didn't bother with us quite so much. Fast forward to the spring, early spring. We were sitting in the living room one afternoon, probably watching TV or playing Xbox, when we heard this steady tapping. It wasn't a tapping at the door, and it wasn't a sound like mice in the attic or in the walls. Just a small tap, tap, tap on the wall at the back of the house. You know, the wall facing the woods. It sounded like it was just on the outside of the house, somewhere between the top of the windows on the ground floor and just beneath the window to the upstairs bedroom. Next day I investigated and found a hole about the size of a golf ball in the wooden siding and a ton of bird shit all over the back patio. Some birds must have found some bugs and rot in that old siding and decided to munch face. Well, it was about then that I decided to do something about our little bird problem. I showered and marched right over to Home Depot to buy a bunch of humane bird deterrent supplies. They didn't have anything I wanted, but the guy working there in the garden department referred me to a little shop in the next town over. This shop looked like an old lady boutique, and it was called Avian Outfitters, something like that. I got a couple of these owl decoys, the ones with the bobbleheads. The lady in the shop also recommended this stuff called scare tape. Sounds fancy, but it just looks like shiny, wide ribbon, like you'd use to wrap a kid's birthday present. It was, what do you call it? Like an iridescent holographic pattern printed on it. We're supposed to hang it so that it'll flutter in the breeze. The sunlight will catch it, and the sparkle, or whatever, from the hologram will spook a bird and keep it away. And I'd say it worked for about a minute. You see, the owl decoys, you gotta keep moving them around from time to time. If you don't, the birds will get wise to the fact that they're dummies. I didn't do that, though, because my wife ended up having a miscarriage. It got hairy there for a while, but she was fine, ended up spending some time in the hospital. But with us running back and forth to doctor's appointments and the hospital and the CVS, I just wasn't able to be on top of the bird situation. I just had more urgent priorities, obviously. The tapping didn't stop either. Probably got even worse. But we didn't feel like dealing with that on top of everything else, so we just kept putting it off. So, on the night of April 30th, I couldn't sleep to save my life. Kept having these crazy night terrors. I don't remember what they were about, but I remember being scared and unable to move or scream. When I woke up, probably about 4 a.m, I could see the bed linens were just drenched in sweat from where I'd been sleeping. My wife had nightmares too. She dreamed that she'd gotten pregnant and carried the baby to term. In the dream, she went to the hospital and delivered the baby. The moment the baby was born, it was wrapped up like a mummy, but in scare tape. The doctor in her dream kept talking about how beautiful the light was shining off the baby's wrapping. but she was upset, couldn't wait to see her baby's face. The doctor finally unwrapped it and asked me to cut the scare tape like an umbilical cord. But when the baby was finally unwrapped, she saw that she hadn't given birth to a human baby at all. She'd given birth to one of those bobblehead owl decoys. She said she woke up when the doctor slapped its bobblehead and it began to cry, with the voice of a human baby. So we turned on the lights and watched a few minutes of an old Seth Meyers in bed before falling back to sleep. We both took a sick day from work and woke up slow the next morning. Made eggs and a big pot of coffee. We were going to sit on the back patio to sip our coffee, and that's when we saw it. Brown wood thrushes, about 50 or 60 of them, all dead on our patio. Not scattered either. And it was obvious they didn't fly into the house and kill themselves or something. They all looked like they had just landed on our patio and dropped dead with no blood or droppings or even loose feathers anywhere. That was when we broke down and called pest control. We didn't know what would have caused all those birds to die. For all we know, it could have been something toxic, something infectious. So we didn't even want to go out there and touch them. The technician, is that what they're called, who came over, said he'd never seen anything like it. He wondered if all those dead birds had been posed by someone trespassing on our property. He was so busy cleaning up all the dead birds to pay much attention to the knothole the birds kept digging in the siding. He just looked at it and offered to come back another time to plug it up, maybe install a one-way door to keep other pests out. I passed on that offer and decided to do it myself. He also said we should consider new siding. I passed on that too, and that was where he left it. So a few days passed. Bad feelings. We couldn't shake the uneasy sensation that we had from seeing all those dead birds. It haunted us. And the tapping in the wall had stopped. But somehow its silence made the situation worse. I can't explain it. We were already grieving the miscarriage, and the stuff with the birds seemed to underscore our feelings of emptiness and loss. When the weekend came, I made another trip to Home Depot and got everything I needed to fill in and patch that hole, the one in our siding. When I got up the ladder, I was hit with an awful rotten egg smell. I dug around in the hole and was really pissed at myself that I didn't make the exterminator do this, and pulled out pieces of what I suppose was a nest made of grass and hair. I expected to find the body of another dead bird, maybe one that had nested in the little knothole and had gotten stuck and died. Nothing could have prepared me for what I did find, though. It was a figurine, about the size of a pack of gum. It looked like it was carved from bone or a chunk of deer antler or something like that. It was in the shape of a bird, an ugly one too, sitting on top of a nest of thorns. I could never be sure, but there were these lumps in the nest, carved to look like broken eggs. I always thought, from the bird's expression maybe, that the bird in the nest had eaten the contents of its own eggs. I showed it to my wife. She didn't see it, but she agreed it looked pretty fucked up. I took a picture of it and would have sent you the picture, Ed, but she broke the phone it was on and the photo was lost. Anyway, she didn't want that voodoo shit in our house for a moment longer. Didn't even want it in the trash bin. And for some reason, I didn't want to burn it. Maybe I was afraid of what fumes it might give off. I don't know. You'll call me silly, but I took a little hand trowel that my wife used to plant a little herb garden and buried it in the woods next to an out-of-the-way section of the little trail that ran behind our neighborhood. I remember making sure no one was around to see because I definitely felt foolish doing it. We moved not long after that, and I swear, as soon as we got settled in our new place, we got pregnant with our daughter, Hope. But there was one last weird thing. One day, after we closed on the old house, we went back to pick up something or sign some papers. I forget what. One day, after we closed on the old house, we went back to pick up something or sign some papers. I forget what. When you sell a house, there's always something. While I was there, I walked down that trail a little ways, just for old time's sake. I walked past the spot where I'd buried the voodoo doll, figurine, whatever. In that exact spot, there was a nearly perfect circle of dead birds. It was a mix of robin and some kind of finch. A geometry teacher couldn't have made a more perfect circle. Damnedest thing I've ever seen.
Hi there, Oz here from the Oddball Aussie Podcast. If you're not listening to the Oddball Aussie Podcast, then you're missing out. You're missing out on cryptids, aliens, ghosts, and a ton of weird stuff. We've even got urban legends and crazy conspiracy theories. So if you want to hear the weird tales and lame dad jokes from the brain of a slightly deranged Aussie, then tune in to the Oddball Aussie Podcast. New episodes every week. You can find me where all good podcasts are found. Look after each other and stay safe out there in the weird.
Hey there, I'm Tara.
And I'm Jessica, and together we co-host the podcast 3 Spooked Girls.
If you love the paranormal
Or murder.
Join us on Mondays for full-length episodes where we discuss our favorite paranormal stories and true crime cases.
And join us again on Thursdays for our mini-sodes called Stabby Snippets, where we tell you all about true crimes happening in the news.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, wherever the hell else you listen to your pods at. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by using the handle @3SpookedGirls.
Come and hang out with us and get your spooky on while we scare the hell out of you.
The 3 Spooked Girls.
Sometimes I have dreams about the fleet ones come swarming towards me across stormy seas, swarming like these great big flocks of migrating birds, blacker than